live right now from 75W Radio, and that's on Facebook Live, as well as on 75wradio.com on our website. And then we are also live on Umma Connect via YouTube and Zoom, where you are following us right now. The conversation tonight is a very difficult conversation. It is a very personal conversation, but yet one that, as we do in the tradition of this program, we always don't fear any program. It's just how, or any topic, it is just how we go about it. I welcome you once again to a very interesting, what I hope will be a very interesting conversation, looking at a very difficult topic, which is the issue of childlessness. But before that, just a few top news stories just to bring you up to date with what is happening elsewhere in the world. In Uganda, the Islamic State has admitted that carried out the twin suicide bombings in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, that killed 3 other people and wounded 33, mostly police officers. And then the US Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa has warned an escalation of the fighting in Ethiopia is threatening any progress towards negotiating a ceasefire. And that follows a visit by Jeffrey Feldman, who said both the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the Tigray People's Liberation Front seemed to believe they were on the cusp of military victory. You remember that the Tigranian rebels have threatened to move onto the capital, Addis Ababa, and the US says it would be unacceptable and catastrophic. Those are just some of the stories that are making the headlines across the continent of Africa. But tonight, we are talking childlessness. Very difficult, but I said personal story, to which many, I think, will be able to relate in one way or another. The way we do this conversation is the global community conversation. We just allow everybody to have a say, as long as we just do it decently and then be, I think, considerate of other people's feelings. It doesn't harm. We just touch every topic. Now, this is the reason as to why the topic tonight is actually a difficult topic to talk about.
Got married to my husband when I was 23. We've been together since I was 14, and started trying to conceive about a year after we got married, so at the age of about 24. After about a year of starting to try to have a baby, we realised that it wasn't happening, and there was friends that had started to have babies, so I questioned something wasn't quite right. So went to the doctors and started the process of fertility tests, and found nothing was classed as unexplained infertility, and was under the local authority for about 3 years, going through 6 rounds of Clomid, 3 cycles of IUI, before then thinking about the IVF process. The last cycle of Clomid did end up me getting pregnant, but unfortunately miscarried at 11 weeks, which was really hard. But I felt positive, the fact that it had happened, that it was something that was going to happen in the future. So we carried on. So 3 years after we started trying, we then looked at IVF. So we had 4 rounds of IVF in total, 1 miscarriage and loss, immune testing, and all different investigations so to try and find out the cause of our infertility. Generally, if IVF is going to work, it's 3 cycles. So we had in our head that we try 3 cycles of IVF, as that was at the time, which I think NICE would recommend in their guidelines. So we ended up having 4 because we had frozen embryos on our last cycle. After the 3rd cycle of IVF, really emotionally, physically, very drained by the whole process. Again, that had taken probably between 2 and 3 years to go through that. So we decided to have a complete break from any fertility treatment. We moved house in that time, started to enjoy things again because it felt like everything had been on hold during that process. So when we did do it, it was almost a reluctant, this is it. It's our last cycle, our last shot of it, really. So we had the IVF. And it was over the summer, so at the time I was teaching full time, and it was over the summer, so it meant that I could relax about it. And sadly, at the end of that IVF process, it was unsuccessful. So whilst in my body, I was kind of prepared and didn't think it actually worked. I think both my husband and I both thought that logically, okay, we've got this one shot, we'll give it a go, and that's it. And if it doesn't work, we'll just move on with our lives. We were very kind of logical about it. But when it actually didn't work, it was quite a different reaction. I think the emotional side of it, of this being it, and in our hearts and emotionally and on all those different levels, it was just, this is the right thing to stop. And it's very trying and very stressful on relationships, both personal relationships, but also the impact on the wider family and friends as well, because they're obviously getting their hopes up and wanting this to happen. And it's not something that, when it doesn't work, there isn't anything that you can say. It's just one of those things, and it's very hard. When we decided enough was enough, I was left with the question, well, now what do I do? It was, being a mother was something that I just thought would always happen. It was in my heart. I'm very, very nurturing and supportive person. So it was a case of, what do I do now? And through processing through the grief of childlessness, decided that I wanted to do something positive with our situation. I wanted something to come out of it where that pain and the sadness had actually had a purpose. So I set up the Dovecote, which is the dovecote.org, which supports people that can't have children. I think socially, the impact of childlessness, again, it's something that varies really. I found great strength from the peer-to-peer support, so finding people who are in my situation. I think socially, we do feel like we're the ones that don't quite fit in. The majority of people in our lives do have children, do have families. My siblings have all got children. I've got nephews and nieces. So socially, it can be quite isolating, difficult, because that loss feels more evident when you're in those situations. Through finding people, having that community, having that network, attending meetups with other people that are childless, that makes you feel, I guess, just less alone, really. We're less alone. There are other people out there, and it is a great comfort.
Well, thank you very much. I think you can see just from this one particular story, the kind of picture that you start getting arising out of the kind of dilemma that this woman went through. I think it speaks volumes to hundreds of thousands, probably millions of women out there who might be going through a similar situation. And when I say this was a difficult conversation to have, it's on the basis of, what stands in the way for those, for example, who are intent and serious about trying to become pregnant or to have a child and failing to do so. But there are others who choose not to, who make the decision that they don't want children. But for those who want, the kind of journey, the kind of situation that they undergo, I think what she has done was to summarize for us a lot of the aspects that come in. I mean, are you grieving over a lost dream? For example, you went into a relationship, you dreamt of having children, and then when you are unable to have the children, it is a loss. But is it a loss that you need to grieve? It is a personal issue that, to the public, some people, somebody outside might not understand, however much you would want or try to understand. There are particular things that a person undergoes through, personally. It's a personal loss, it's a personal problem that you have to deal with. While you might try to understand how the person feels, you cannot be in their shoes because probably you are not there. You are not there until you are there. There's the issue of the emotional impact, the toll, the cost of this. She talks about, how much strain. You look at the decision to go down the route of IVF. and what it meant going through all the three different phases. You do phase one, you do phase two, and each one, and with the third one, there was the expectation that things could probably change for the better. And even with that promise, that came to drop. How do you manage to go through that? It's not just the women, because with the men, the husbands as well, you're wondering whether, could the problem be with you? I've had situations, I've had friends actually who have stayed together, husband and wife, 5, 6, 7 years, unable to bear a child. And under the pressure, there was one very famous story, around people that we knew. The man was under extreme pressure. The woman is under extreme pressure. It's the relatives who are on both sides sort of pushing, but the pressure is more on the woman, because the assumption is every man, as long as they can get married, then they can father a child, and the pressure is immense. Uh, Man ends up sleeping with the maid. Maid actually conceives twins. Then suddenly the situation changes at home, because the mother-in-law now starts looking at the maid as the priceless commodity that they have inside the home, because she can bear children, and the housewife couldn't. The situation puts under a lot of strain, but Allah operates in very different ways. That after this kind of pressure that happened, a situation that almost broke up the relationship, the woman becomes pregnant. And surprise, surprise, the pregnancy was her husband's. After 7, 8 years of waiting, after going down the route of that uncomfortable decision to sort of, sway on the side, suddenly Allah decides to bring a child. But this is following up on the twins that were born by the maid, with huge impact, just in terms of, you can imagine what that actually means. So a situation like this puts the parties involved to a lot of pressure, a lot of strain, emotionally. Does it make you stronger? Does it actually allow you, probably help you to be able to address this, whatever challenge that you're facing together? Does it make you stronger? Because there are people who, after going through this particular situation, end up becoming much, much more stronger. Like coming out of this particular situation, they become stronger. Is it possible that probably you become stronger? You get to learn something about the other party, because sometimes you think someone loves you so much until you're put to the test. Then that particular time now creates a situation that actually becomes so demanding. You realize, was the person truly loving you, or were they just after, a situation? And how do you come out of that? Uh, does the relationship, does marriage really, for it to work, is it just about the procreation, about the idea of getting children? With the failure to have children, can you still maintain a marriage or relationship? Have you thought about alternative ways? Because even within, from a religious perspective, and this is the interesting bit about this conversation, it's difficult to detach religion from what we do, because one, we are Muslims. We've got many Muslims on here. We've got Christians on here. We've got Jews even here, and probably animists as well coming into to be part of the conversation. And the idea is, in every religion that you go to, you'll find that there is a concept of family, and family is built around husband, wife, and children. The pressure that is brought, by the in-laws now. Amba is already saying the pressure that is brought, upon the wife could even impact on the possibilities of even conceiving. But now we realize that where it was husband and wife, it is no longer just the two of you. Suddenly, there are other parties involved. And as these parties get involved, how much impact are they bringing into this kind of conversation? Could they be a force for good, actually? Because if they understood the realities that people go through, could they be of help? From a religious perspective, I was saying, in Islam, for example, Allah establishes in the Quran very clearly that He decides who gets what. There are people that He gives boys, there are people that He gives girls. There are people He gives boys and girls. There are people He gives twins. There are people He gives many children, and other people a few children. There are people He gives none. And all of this now creates a particular picture, like the God that is so loving. Why would He, for example, put a person into a particular situation? All of this sometimes is just part of the tests that we have to go through. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least from an Islamic perspective, does not put pressure, does not put a person into a situation that is beyond their capacity to bear. It's just how far you can stretch that patience to be able to come out of that. Like we do in this conversation, it will be interesting to hear if you have a personal story. Are you one of the people that we are speaking about, just in terms of going through those experiences? Could you have gone through a time, for example, where there was just too much pressure and you couldn't conceive? Then all of a sudden, when you thought you had given up on that, suddenly it comes. We've heard from the religious, actually, Islamic and biblical evidence, where, for example, Sarah, the wife of Prophet Ibrahim or Abraham, alayhi salam, conceived very late in life, to the point that when the angels came and brought the good news that you are actually going to conceive and have a child, apparently she slaps her cheek in laughter, as to say, I'm already, post-menopause. I'm already in menopause, I'm actually post-menstruation, so I'm in menopause. And then the age had already gone up to the 90s, late 90s. Imagining that a husband that is also that situation, to imagine that such a person now would be able to conceive. But God works in miraculous ways. Could you be the person that we are talking about? Maybe you have that personal story that we can hear from. Sometimes when it comes from the individual themselves, it helps for the people to understand. A lot of things sometimes we say, not intentionally meant to harm people, but we say them because we do not know. Until you understand what a person goes through, what goes through their mind, the kind of psychological battles that they are fighting with themselves, does it actually shake your own personal confidence? Could it be about the other person who is not actually, appearing in here? Because quite often, like I said, it is always the woman who is under pressure, and the husband sometimes just is free. But as men, we also have our own pressure. You start questioning yourself. And with men, it is even worse. Because as a man, the moment you start questioning yourself, you can't even get it up. And that is the dilemma. That even the chances that would have been there, for a possibility like that, get lost. It would be very interesting to hear if there are those personal stories. But if you are one person that is going through those trials and tribulations, just know it's one of the tests of Allah, and hopefully you should be able to overcome it. If it doesn't happen, then there are alternatives. From an Islamic perspective, from a secular perspective, people do adopt. In Islam, adoption is not allowed, at least not in the formal way that it is done in the secular system, because when you adopt a child, for example, they take on your name and then they can inherit your property and so on. Islam is very particular when it comes, for example, lineage and protection of blood. And therefore, you are not allowed to adopt, but you can foster. And when you foster, you can actually get whatever you would want to bequeath to this child, to go to that child, and there's no problem with that. The only problem is if you go down the route of adoption from a secular way, that means the child can actually share in the property, and that would have issues. There would be legal issues from an Islamic perspective. Tonight's conversation, like I said, is a difficult conversation, but we have had more difficult conversations here, and we have managed to navigate them. Remember, the program is about you. It's you that make the conversation interesting by sharing these particular stories. And so tonight, inshallah, we open up to start talking about these particular issues, these particular stories. Do you know someone that has been going through, such a difficult dilemma? Is there a person, probably, could it be yourself, and you managed to overcome it? How have you managed to cope thus far? I think that is be a very interesting conversation that, inshallah, we'll be hoping to navigate tonight. Seeing, well, new faces here, people that have not had before. I think I see, is it Abu Fahima or Uthman Walid Abu? Uthman, welcome very much. I'll just actually come to you as a man, which surprises not, entering into a conversation about childlessness. What is your own take, given so far what we have spoken about? Uthman? Is it Abu Fahim? Can you unmute yourself, please? Okay, I'll let you settle in. Probably you haven't gotten to that. I see Laila Narvega saying it's a very sensitive situation when a woman fails to conceive in her early years of marriage. Yes, Laila, I think I'll come to you. Given the fact that you're in Kampala, you might actually end up dozing off. It's too late in Kampala. And thank you very much for joining this conversation from thus far. Please, if you can unmute yourself, let's get this conversation. For you as a journalist, actually, it will be very interesting. You are a woman. Yes, you are a mother, I know already, but you're also a journalist, which means these are some of the stories that we are likely to, incur or find in our own lives. How do you tell such a story? How do you talk to such a person? Layla? Oh, all right. The little ones can't let you speak. Okay, understood. Oh dear. No, would have wanted the noises in the background. I don't think there is a problem with that. But let me just look for somebody else who might be. Maybe you can manage to get them to sleep sooner. How comes they are still up this late? Let's go to Zahra. Zahra, can you unmute yourself, please? Zahra? Zahra? Oh dear. That's not a good start. Let's go to Amina. Amina, I'm sorry, I'm coming to you now as a start, but you know how we do it. At least there's nothing new. If you can get unmuting yourself, you are saying there was pressure from families which might affect even the possibility of conception. Let's first get your own take on this particular topic. Amina, are you in a position to speak?
Yeah, Salaam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. I mean, I've had a lot of silence in the background, so it's good at least to get a voice, to hear a voice there. Welcome to tonight's conversation. Very difficult topic, I should imagine, not only for women, but also for men. First of all, maybe your own reaction to this, the issue of childlessness.
Okay, basically me is not, my experience is not with the in-laws, but it is about the personal experience. I was, after my nikah about 15 years ago, it took us about 2 years to conceive, but then I reached a point where I had given up. And then one day I felt something was there, but like you could feel your body as a woman that there is a change.
Right.
Then when I went to my GP, they detected that there was a pregnancy. So I was happy, and we were happy, me and my partner. But then 5 weeks later, and then my body goes back to normal. I started feeling normal again. I'm like, okay, this is not good then. I ran to my GP. I begged him 15 years ago, we were allowed to beg for the ultrasound scan and you could easily get it. So he straight away sent me for an emergency scan where they found no heartbeat.
Right.
So, and then the worst thing, it was bad, but it was okay. They sent me home. They didn't do anything, no operation, nothing. They sent me home to basically think about it and then come back to them with what I wanted to do, because they gave me an option of termination, but in which way would they be doing it? So I came home and it was really disturbing, feeling that you've got something there which you've been waiting for, or as a girl, all your life you've been preparing to welcome this, and you knowing that it's no longer there, it's not normal. So I just went back to them and asked them to do basically the operation where they had to vacuum it out. But during that time, obviously I started blaming my partner. I was like, maybe you are the reason why this happened. Because the worst thing about what happens here, every time a lady gets a miscarriage, the medics are not able to explain it. They will tell us, because I must say, when I was in the hospital, it was a group of us, like the younger girls who are going through this. It was really shocking, and most of us were Africans.
Right.
So
yeah, when you say you blamed your partner, what had he done? I mean, was it about something he had done, or you were thinking that why did you think that he was responsible for what had happened?
No, I just felt like, because during the time of preparing to conceive, I just felt like he was a typical African man who wasn't really bothered about the process. I felt like I was the one buying about 100 pregnant tests. I was the one like at home. I just felt like he should have been there with me, preparing through the process of basically making this child. But the reason I was blaming him was like, oh, maybe if we were there, things wouldn't go the other side.
Mm.
That's why I was blaming him.
And over the 2 years that you are trying to conceive, how
Yeah.
helpful was he? Was he always with you? Was he encouraging you? Was he doing the best that you thought he could to help you, better the
The,
situation, probably conceive?
yeah, no, the only thing he did, which I thought and I felt was normal, which most men in my country would do, is to just be there and be a good husband to you.
Right.
But in terms of what I've seen in the Western culture, whereby a man has to be talking about this with you, talking about the process and what's going to be happening. No, he didn't know that. So basically, I was the only one reading the book on how to get pregnant, how to do all this. I was the one taking the pregnant cares. I was the one doing all these folic acids, and I was just teaching him. So out of this anyway, what I saw that the only scary thing which happens, the medics are not able to basically explain to us why miscarriages do happen, and they do happen. So the good thing, we got, because as I told you that it was a lot of us, we got into a big group, but then afterwards we
that's what I was actually going to ask. I mean, when you're saying, were you having a conversation around what the problem could have been, especially when you see almost all of you are blacks, we are Africans.
Yeah. We exchanged numbers. I would say victims of that. We managed to exchange numbers. So I spoke to this Ghanaian girl to basically, for us to try and make up the reason or to come to an understanding why this happened to us. So she just told me that her grandma had told her that it's because of the hot stuff we consume from here, that we don't give ourselves to consume like cold foods, drinks and stuff, that we drink so much hot stuff that affects the environment in there, which the medics here wouldn't support. We're like, oh, we don't know what you guys are talking about. So anyway, that ended, and we went through all that process, everything ended, and then we came back to normal. And the only promise anyway, which my GP gave me was, oh, give your body time to heal. As soon as it heals, go back to the deed, you will conceive. And alhamdulillah, it was like that. Afterwards, I conceived a healthy baby. But yeah, I think it's about us preparing, I think reading the books, because I must say the book I bought, I met a lady 3 years after me giving birth to my firstborn. I met another lady who'd struggled for 5 years before she'd actually gotten pregnant. And then I gave her this book. And then a few months later, she was calling me to thank me that she'd conceived.
What's in that book?
The book, I got it from Boots. It was like what to expect when you're expecting, and all those books like that. Yeah, basically it just gives you that understanding and what to do. So
before I let you go, before I open up the conversation and widen up the conversation to other people, I'd like to just you to paint a picture when you realize that this time you managed to conceive after that amount of pressure that you had gone through. Just paint a picture for us, probably. How did that feel? Did you do anything special? How did that feel? Maybe take us through that, please.
Yeah, with that one, like as I told you, I had bought about 100 pregnant tests. So the kids. So it's like every day, since that day I thought that I got my first period, then I started testing. Every day I was just testing to see if I was pregnant. And I was driving my husband really crazy with this, because it was like, this is abnormal. The bins were getting filled up with this. So the day when it's like my body told me that you were pregnant, then I checked and yeah, it was positive. I was so happy, but at the 5th week, then for some reason I had a program I had attended, and the whole day I didn't eat anything, which was a mistake.
Right.
So at the end of the day, when I came back home, I was spotting. So I just thought, oh, here we go again. I'm gonna lose it. So luckily enough, those days, 15 years ago, the ambulances were so good. So I called them, took me to hospital, they did the checks, and the baby was there. So from there, everything was really normal because I
How
know
old is the baby now?
the baby is 15 years.
Have you ever told them what you went through to get them?
No, I haven't told her, but it's the way how I've always treated her. I've treated her like just a part of it's just piece of a part of my heart. She's very special, yeah.
Brilliant story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Very,
but it was very, it was a very good experience afterwards, and knowing that I had put in so much work, whereby I did so much research by reading the books which are out there, and looking at my ovulation periods, looking at the days of the periods, which I didn't think was important then. All that work, I felt like it paid off, and changing my diet, really going for organic foods more than these processed foods.
well, where you are at is almost the question that I was going to put to you, which would be your parting words or words of advice to any women out there who are still struggling to conceive. Probably some advice that I hear you have already gone into the diet. Probably now let's package it well so that it's a message to the women out there who are struggling to conceive. What message would you have for them, given that you went through 2 traumatizing years before you conceived? What advice would you have for them?
The honor advice, really, my first thing which I did was to look at my days of like the periods. So you mark them. Some people don't pay much attention to this, but start marking them on the calendars. When you do, then it will give you a clear picture of your periods, like when the days when you can actually get pregnant, as science says. And then from there, you just start eating good food, like organic foods, really, if you can. And yeah, you look after yourself. You lessen the stress. You lessen the stress.
That's very important. And for the men, what advice do you have for the husbands to the prospective women?
For the husbands, to try and be supportive to their women, but again, you also look at their diet and lessen their stress, really, because it works both ways. When you guys are stressed, you can't shoot as well. So
you can't get it up.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. Amina, Barakallahu fikum, and thank you very much for opening up a very difficult conversation, but I'm sure now having gone personal, of course, your story now ended with a positivity that you know ended up having a child. But I'm sure the way we do it in this conversation, you can just raise up your hand, you do it the Zoom way, just click, and we will come to you and hear your particular story. Laila Nalwega, who the babies cannot allow to speak, says, I have a friend who has failed to conceive 3 years in marriage. She's the second wife. The first wife who had stopped giving birth, conceived and gave birth again. She's kind of older, late early 40s, and my friend is 27 years old. She's literally running mad because she thinks the first wife wanted to mock her or rather bewitch her in the process. Well, those are kind of some of the difficult stories that we have to contend with in a lot of times. Yes, remember the conversation is live here. We are live on 75W Radio and we are live on Zoom and YouTube, streaming live on YouTube via Umma Connected. Salma, I would like to get to you. Salma, are you able to join the conversation? Are you able to unmute yourself, please? Salma? Salma, are you there? Hello, Salma, are you able to unmute yourself? I'll just go to Stella, then I'll come to men at least and hear the men's side because quite often it might be the thought. Is that Salma?
No, this is Haskell. There's a hand up.
Oh, there's a hand up. Oh,
Yes.
Hajat Sar. Oh, yes. Okay, please. Hajat Sar, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sheikh KK. It's quite a very sensitive topic, as you've been saying. And it so happens that today, most of our young people are really struggling getting pregnant. And there are many cases, more cases than we used to have because it's more common. And we have now found in places like Uganda, where we have even fertility clinics, which are just specializing in that area. My concern is, I think sometimes people think that when one gets married, in the first year, automatically they have to conceive. So if a woman is not conceiving, she does get a lot of pressure from the in-laws. They put her under a lot of pressure, and that causes a lot of stress within their marriage. And when someone is very stressed, I think even things don't work properly for the man and for the woman. And in a way, they are not helping. I have a niece who got married, like within the first 2 years, she didn't conceive. And then the mother-in-law would visit even more often and asking around whether she's craving for anything. She was really so pointedly making herself hard. Like, they have a belief that the young girls of today do not want to have children. They are more focused on their careers. Yes. And yet the poor girl was also had started getting concerned, but the mother-in-law and sister-in-law used to visit more often and pointing out and asking her why she's not craving for stuff, because they were, for them, it was like, well, you're overdue. You're supposed to give us children. And it was quite so stressful. And she did happen to get her pregnant, and then she miscarried. Oh. Yeah, and the loss was too big for her because she even went through a lot of things. It was, she gotten to be aware that she had problems with her tubes. So she went through all the drill of having her tubes flushed out, which was a very painful process. And even before she had that done, she had went to one of the fertility clinics where they told her that she would never be able to have a child naturally. So she had to try the IVF, which was a very expensive treatment. Yeah. So I advised her and I said to her, you know what, sometimes you just need to be a bit more patient. Because the man was also having trouble because he was being put on a timetable because the lady had to point out the days when she's supposed to conceive, and then they have to do things, which is too much.
That's already stressful. That's too much pressure.
Yeah, so things were just going out of hand. I continued to counsel her, and I said to her, you know what? You put Allah first, and then everything will fall in place, and take things easy. But one thing I know, is easy for you to say when you're not into that kind of situation, yeah? Absolutely. But for the person who is in it, is really in a very terrible situation. And even me, who was like, okay, let me give them time and not ask. But every time I would want to know that she had her period. And I had to stop myself several times not to ask.
I just have two questions for you that I think are kind of related, just to help paint the picture for whoever is following the conversation. One is, I will be coming to our next video just off the back of two people, then will come to the video, please. Hajat Sarah, two quick questions. You say that today's people imagine that if you get into marriage within the first year, you have to conceive. Is there a time frame? Because actually, I thought this was a biological accident, except in the case of the one that you have said that she took the time to say, these are the days we can do it. I just imagine that this is a biological accident resulting from, and actually, I would imagine that within the first year, you expect very much, because the love at that point is still very high. You are very energetic. There's no time to lose. You are using all the time that is available. You are still so much in love, as opposed to later on when things start getting used to each other. When you say there's no time frame for that, or rather people assume that within the first year you have to do that. I would have thought that naturally that would have been. That is question number one. The question number two is regarding the kind of advice when you are looking in from an outsider's point of view. Is there a feeling, for example, from a societal point of view, that a person has? Let me put it this way: there's too much pressure that is put mainly on women and not on men. Yet for men now it's difficult. Oh, someone is saying my sound is echoing a bit. Okay, I think it's whenever I move. Someone told me my laptop. Whenever I move, my sound plays up.
True, so, we do lose you. We do lose you, and we can hardly hear some of the things you ask. Oh. I think you get excited a bit, and you.
Right, I'll try to calm myself down, because I can see the studios. Umma Connected is already saying, I don't know if it's just me, but KK's sound is bad. I hope it can get better. Subhanallah. Is it that bad? I'll just try to stay in one place and then maybe. So my first question was that regarding regarding the timeliness of how soon is too soon, to sort of conceive. And then two, it will be about the pressure being put so much on the women, yet the pressure on men, it cannot work. Do you think it does work? So probably that would help us get deep into the conversation.
Yeah, about the first question about how soon, at first things were just normal. It wasn't like she had any concern, for the first 2 years. So the timetable came in when the gynecologist told her to watch out for her ovulation days.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when she started looking keenly on when she's ovulating so that they could do things in that time to get a baby. And about the pressure, it doesn't just affect men, even women. Yeah. If there is stress within marriage, it affects both parties. The only difference is that for the man it's worse, because for them, they will not even get an election if they have pressure on top of everything. Mm-hmm. With a woman, well, things might happen, but not the best way possible or the best way that they should be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what else to add on.
I'm just thinking in terms of the men, because now you've said for the women to look at their dates, to try marking the dates when they are going to be ovulating or rather getting their periods and so on. For a man now who is totally blind outside this, is there anything that a man can do within the confines of those particular dates that have been noted down? Because we are not aware of the dates, and the woman might come and she's trying to work around those dates. And sometimes for men, actually for many men, when someone promises you that psychologically can actually kill you, because you're already thinking that it's like the Banyarwanda call it umubyizi. It's like a shift. You're going for a shift, and you know the impact of that. So is there anything that men can sort of work around? Because for the women, you've said check your dates in terms of that. Is there any advice that you have for men?
Actually, if you want the man to work better, I don't think you need to tell them that this is when you have to do it. I think you have to use tactics. So show him that you just want to do things, but not tell him because you have a purpose for doing that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Elisa. And now you started by mentioning that actually it's a big problem for the younger generation now to sort of conceive. Why do you think that is?
I think because they are marrying a bit late, I would think so. That could be. And they have a lot of things to, like, their career women, much of their attention is onto their jobs, I don't know, but I think with us, it wasn't like that. Things just happened. I never looked for a baby. You just found yourself pregnant. We didn't know about even those fertility days. We were lucky, I think, or probably what we ate was better for us and what they are eating is different. Mm. I haven't really figured out what the problem is.
Right.
And well, maybe, they also using some family planning methods before they, yes. That could also affect them.
Might. Yeah. And someone is comfortably saying in the chat room, I think men need to watch out for the ways to increase their little swimmers and good diet. Very, very important. I think that that's definitely a lesson to take on. Thank you very much, Ajat Sarah. I think we'll come to you. Ajat Speaker, Leila Narwega there is just laughing, saying you're telling it as it is. No shortcuts around that. Rayhan, I can see Rayhan. I can see you already with us. Welcome to the conversation. We are talking childlessness. Very serious topic. Is there an experience that you can share? Probably someone you know, or yourself probably. Have you been the victim of that? Rayhan? Hello, Rayhan, are you able to unmute yourself? I'm trying to get to you. In the meantime, Rayhan, as she settles in, I'll go to Sophia Mrangwa. Sophia Mrangwa, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waho nyabo. Welcome to the conversation. We are talking.
Thank you. I'm just listening. I don't have anything to say.
You don't know anyone who is childless, a friend, probably a person.
I have, but
fantastic. Maybe that's the time to talk about it.
Yeah, but I don't know, because she won't tell me, because anyway, the only thing she said to me that they told her in hospital not to be stressed.
Mhm.
Yeah, she should be less stressed. And they told her not to overthink about it and to eat the right food, like what is being discussed. But other than that, she's still trying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think how big a problem do you think is? I mean, from the sound of it, it just looks like it's someone you know, so it's only one person. But how widespread, in your perspective, do you think this is? Probably in comparison to what it was in the past and what it is today. I just thought I was saying it seems to be much prevalent today, or is it because we are talking about it a lot more now?
No, I think nowadays it is on a high rate, because I think even the contraception methods people we are using, those two can affect, and the food we eat.
Right.
That's scientifically proven. They say that the food we eat too affects the way we conceive. So I don't know, but I don't know only one person. I have very many people who have been trying, and it's really hard. And as a friend, it's just so complicated, because you don't know what to tell them. You know?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
I think that, so since you don't know what to tell them, what do you tell them? Because probably
you just have to reassure them that one time it will happen, because there's some people where it has happened for them, and you just tell them keep praying and less stress. One time it will happen, but you don't want to put them down. Or yeah, but that's how it is.
sometimes the dilemma is in a situation where you're trying to talk to someone about a situation that you have not been in yourself. Managing to be able to communicate is like that kind of feeling, like when you're trying to convince or talk to someone when you have not been through that. It's like getting a sheikh who is coming to preach about marriage and is never married. And while he'll have all the textbook knowledge, the Quranic knowledge of it, reality is different when you have to face when you have to be in the actual battle line.
Yeah, it is different. Of course, that's what I first tell them. I tell them I haven't been in your situation and I don't understand your situation, but I know God is the giver and God is the taker. So maybe one time, you can't just tell them like it won't happen, because that will upset them. Mm-hmm. So you just have to reassure them. It's a complicated thing. It is very complicated, because one of my friends has been trying for now 4 years, and she's done everything. She's married, but sometimes she'll be like, oh, you guys are going to give me all your babies and I'll be looking after them for you. And you feel like, oh, bless her. Even the big one, she calls them baby. My son is 13, but you come and say, how is the baby? And you'll be like, he's grown up now. And she'll say like, yeah, I know. But she's like, she loves children, but she's really trying. It's really sad. And it's very complicated.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now you are saying you had nothing to say, yet you've ended up saying quite a lot, which I'm sure we've taken away as you're listening into the conversation. That's the beauty about this particular conversation, how we open up walls. Before you know it, you're actually delving into territory you didn't think you would go into. Ryan, you have the microphone. Thank you very much, Sophia. Ryan, you have the microphone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Doesn't sound like Ryan, or is that Ryan now?
Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Probably what I wanted to share with you guys. I think I found that in Uganda it's different. In Uganda, men, they're not blamed if there's nothing happening with terms of getting a baby. Men are not blamed, which is different here. Here it's like everyone is open to, like, they can blame anyone. Like, okay, maybe it's a lady or a man can be in trouble at the same time as well. But in Ghana, it's like men, no, they get away with it. And sometimes the problem lies on the men as well. Mm-hmm. Alhamdulillah, my case was different. Me, in terms of conceiving these things. Yeah. But I did have some when I need time for my time, when that time, so I had to kind of trick my husband, because my husband is kind of sensitive. If you give him a timetable, he's very sensitive. He won't be able to catch up with that.
Brian, I'll be telling you the truth. I'll be sensitive to a timetable as well. I'll be sensitive to a timetable.
So
you
yeah,
trick me.
yeah, I could come up with tricks, this and that, and then we ended up having 3 kids, alhamdulillah. So yeah, but the timetable, it doesn't work for my husband at all. Even now, we're not even trying. We've done that bit, but still, you don't give him a timetable. You've got to do some tricks if you want to have something. Anyway, from him.
No, absolutely. That applies to almost all. I can almost speak for all men. And if there is a man who disagrees, put your hand up and come and tell me that you are given a timetable and you are comfortable. There's something about the timetable and the way the men's society works. How widespread is this problem of childlessness? Do you know many people who, friends probably, or people acquaintances that are struggling to get children?
Yeah, I have a friend who's been married for 5 years now. They've tried, they've not got a child yet. But the good thing, they found out this time it's not a woman, it's a man. And usually when men, they find out they have a problem, their sperm count they're struggling with their sperm count, they kind of feel shy. But it's not something to feel shy. But they should know there's treatment for everything. We are very lucky, alhamdulillah, we are here. We are very lucky. We have treatment for most of the things here. We can go for any option if you want to. But I don't know, I'm not good with Islam. I don't know how Islam lets us explore all the opportunities we have in terms of conceiving, and there are other venues as well. But alhamdulillah, we're here. There are other people should be shy away, shouldn't do this, but they should try other opportunities which are available for us. That's my take.
No, like in the case of IVF, for example, which is an option that has been taken on very widely within the Western world, and in Uganda, actually, surprisingly, I think I've done a lot of research into things women that sometimes I grew up around women so much that you end up knowing too much about women that is quite scary. My wife sometimes hears me giving testimonies on things and she's just in shock. Like, those are women things that men are not supposed to know. But I ended up in a fertility clinic in Uganda. Dr. Sadi, who I'm sure you know, he had wanted to do a bit of publicity. There's a story I did. You can actually find it up on YouTube. It's about a woman who gave birth to five kids at once, 5 babies at once via IVF. Yes, and it was the 5th time they were trying. They had tried the 3 times the normal and had gone over that and they couldn't. So I went and I went in Uganda at Dr. Studies, and they carried out an IVF on a woman who ended up giving birth to 5 babies. The husband, of course, ran away because while the IVF was about, no, he was in shock. He was in shock because all he was looking for was one baby. Then to look into the tube, into the machine, and the machine is showing like 5 different things. The day the babies were born, actually, when I went there, Dr. Sadi was trying to get me to publicize the story so that it could get the husband to come. And it was around that. But well, the man got shocked and ran away, hearing that it was 5 children. But it was unbelievable to hear the kind of pain that people go through to try to get children, or women to try to conceive. And then the problem becomes even much deeper when it gets to men, because for men to admit failure, all the manhood is gone the moment it gets to a point where it's the man's problem. And quite often, so the problem again is thrown onto the woman. The impact on men, whether they would be able to try, because I think that's another element that probably we should be discussing, right? How men go about looking for treatment, because women will do everything. Women will do anything. They were advised on this. They will go get the sheikh. You look for that. For men to find a man being bothered to the depth of having to go through a lot to sort of get treatment, it's not impossible, but it's not your usual thing. It's not the one thing that you'll be finding sort of happening easily.
Yeah, but I think some people, like my friend I was talking about, I think she's depressed and she's kind of withdrawn from the community now. She can't come to those occasions, the wedding, these things. No, she doesn't. She doesn't turn up. She comes up with excuses because she needs to isolate herself. Every time she goes in with these communities, they're asking, well, have you given birth? Are you pregnant? Are you this? The community is not helping either the situation anyway. But men should be brave enough also to seek treatment. They should be brave enough.
Now, there's one dilemma. There's one dilemma that Amina has raised here, which it was sort of playing on my mind, but Amina has raised it, and Amina Hamba in the chat room has raised it. Whether, as couples before marriage, we need to go for fertility checks as a couple to ensure the issue of compatibility. Quite often, by the time you almost, well, a lot of our communities, at least from an Islamic perspective, you're not even supposed to sleep with the girl until you are married. A lot of times, of course, that is almost taboo within our own societies and settings. So by the time often this is going to happen, first of all, emotionally, you have invested heavily in someone. For you to go for this fertility test and then to find out that you are not compatible, how you now detach yourselves despite finding out the outcome that you cannot actually between yourselves have babies, that's a dilemma. What would you say to that, Rayan?
If it was me, I think I wouldn't even think about checking the fertility. At the end of the day, I would leave that give it to Allah, leave it to Allah to decide for our fate, if the man agrees to that anyway. But I wouldn't think this is something people should explore, because for most times you're investing too much in each other before so having this kind of disappointments, which are forever, there's something, the other options we could do to kind of get a baby. So I'm thinking, checking fertility before you get to go anywhere, I don't think it's an option I would advise anyone to go for.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Rayan. Rayan, rather. Thank you very much for that contribution. I think I need to hear from a man now to hear their own take. Chance K, I see you already here. Thank you very much for being with us once more. Ajat Sarah in the chat room says childlessness in African societies is taken to be a problem for women. Today, it is a very profitable business in Uganda. Now, Chance K, you've been listening into the conversation. It's been mainly women talking about this. There's a problem with men as well. Chance K? Chance K, are you there? Or are you unable to unmute? I'll go to my American man, Abe Kawes. Wana Abe, Haji Abe, salamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome to this conversation. So how are you today?
I'm not bad. How are you? I joined kind of late. So,
yes, you joined kind of late, actually. I noticed when you were coming in, but I'm sure you've heard, at least you were able to hear what Rayan was saying there. But of course, you will have a view just in terms of childlessness, especially when it comes to men. It's been established that a lot of times the assumption is that it's the women who are the problem when it comes to the inability to conceive. How big a problem is it for men?
I think it does affect both sides. I guess the question is whether if one, if one is aware or not aware, and if they find out that they are unable to say have kids, how do they deal with it? Do they deny? Do they start pointing fingers? I mean, it's a common practice that normally men will basically always point fingers at women, but I think it can, affect either side. And I think it's just being man enough or woman enough to face it all once it happens and acknowledge, if at all there is a remedy, acceptable depending on which side of the aisle you are. In terms of religion, we seek the necessary steps to, to correct it if it's it can be corrected in a permissible way.
Is it easy? Is it easy for men to sort of accept, that accept that they need help? Because quite often, I mean, what makes a man, the manness in men now almost means you're not going to acknowledge even with that.
I don't think that if there is a problem, I mean, like facing up to it, makes you less of a man. And I mean, like you say, it goes back to, whether you have the courage, I mean, to acknowledge or to accept, that there is a problem. I mean, many times, I guess, many men do not want to do that. But my take is that it doesn't make you less of a man if you have accepting that you have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are one amongst many. Okay, Salma is unmuted. Salma, are you there? Thank you very much, Hajabe. Barakallahu fikum. Salma, are you there? Oh, your mic is not on. Oh, yes. Salma, you're almost unmuted, and then you suddenly went into mute as well. Okay, Mr. Ismail, can we have that video, please? And then I think we'll open up the conversation. Oh, there's a hand up. Let me take Mayanja Fazil as we get our next video ready so that we can, again, because there is the religious aspect to this particular conversation. Mayanja Fazil, salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, and how are you?
I'm good. I've been following the conversation.
Ameen.
Yeah, but I think my experience is that it's more of women. Women are more under pressure on that particular topic rather than men, which is quite interesting. I remember when we had our first kid, we had no problems. Then when we had the second one, right, we had a few problems, and I think we had a miscarriage, something of that sort. And then we tried and tried and tried. And then actually it was the woman, it was my wife who was actually counting and noticing. Me, I wasn't even like bothered that much, by the way, to be honest. But I knew that maybe we're looking for a second child, but I wasn't that bothered much. So
how long did it take to get the first child? Was it as soon as? And
yeah, it was instant.
Right.
Instant. Yeah. But then for the second, it was a few hiccups here and there. So for the second, we had to go and see the GP. So the GP was like, okay, the problem is not with the problem might not be with the lady, but it might be with, you. And I noticed the GP was quite hesitant in telling me that the problem might be with me. And I was wondering, why is she a bit hesitant to say that maybe it's me with the problem?
Yes.
And even, maybe my wife was also scared to tell me that, hey, I think we need to check you out as well. But literally, I wasn't even bothered or hinged like at all. So when she told me that, hey, we have to do, your test and see what is wrong, that thing, I don't know if you have done it before, but at times it might be a problem with the, what do you call it, the sperms, yeah?
The sperm count.
Sperm, yeah, the sperm count
yeah.
and that kind of stuff. Because it doesn't mean that if you have intercourse, the stuff like the lady will conceive, or the sperms might be weak and that kind of stuff. So you need to do something about it.
It might be Chinese, poor quality.
It might be Chinese, and you might have to eat a lot of ground nuts and stuff like that. So I ate a lot of ground nuts during those months. Anyway, I had to go and do the test, and good thing is that the test came back and my sperm count was good. And then we just had to, keep trying. And
were you scared? Were you scared at all going for this particular test? Because I know psychologically we need to talk. Sometimes we ask some of these questions and they sound silly, but it's about the mindset. I remember a long time when we were still doing those AIDS tests, when AIDS was really serious, 1980s, 1990s there. You would go to what was called Bowman House, which was opposite Parliament. But the moment you go to Bowman House, you go there willingly until you get there. Then you start pacing around the corridor as if it's you're waiting for a wife in the labor ward to give birth. just worried about the whole concept of going for the test. You do the test, then the day of the result, you almost want to hide, and you would be the only one to get it. So going in for this particular test,
yeah.
how did that feel?
No, to be honest,
are you having some feeling that probably I might actually be the problem?
To be honest, I don't know, maybe because I was just young, but I wasn't bothered at all. To be honest, the entire experience did not bother me that much. I don't know why. Like, everything that they told me, I was up for it. Like, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that. I'm like, yeah, fine, I'll do it. And then I remember, given it was my first experience about doing the sperm test as well, it was quite a good experience for me to know how it is done. And
how is it done, by the way? I don't know how it's done.
No, okay, what they do is, number one, you have two options. You can do it from home. They give you I don't know if you've ever worked in a factory, but what do you call it? That they give you a small bottle where you have to put the semen. Now, this is the funny part. To drive the semen from home to the hospital, the woman has to put it between her breasts. I don't know if this is very explicit, but
no. I think we are getting to learn now. I've never heard.
The woman has to put it, because that's what the instructions say, that the woman has to.
Is it a small bottle then, in that sense? Is it
it's a small bottle.
The one that you take your stool normally in the sample?
Yes. Yeah. No, a bit bigger than that.
Right.
So the woman has to put it between her breasts and then drive it to the hospital. Now, if you do not maintain that temperature, the sperm is going to die.
Right.
So if it dies, you have to do it again.
Right.
Now, the second option, the gentleman has to walk into the hospital. Then they put you in a room on your own. They leave you in there with the what do you call the thing?
With the bottle.
The bottle. Yeah, they give you the bottle, and then you sort yourself. If you know what I mean. With some aids there. So you sort yourself, and then the gentleman, they tell you to leave everything there, and then the man will come, and they'll take the sample, and then they'll send in the results.
So the criteria, because I think if you had a doctor, probably it would have made a lot more sense. But since, I mean, you underwent that would help us to at least appreciate and understand. What sort of quantity is it? Are they particular about the quantity, how much you have to put in the bottle? Or
no, I think
adequate?
That's quite interesting. I don't remember very well, but what I know is I think whatever you can get in there, it may be your first shot or whatever, and then that's what they can use for the sampling.
And how long does it take to get the results, given that now the woman has to carry it?
It takes, I think it took around a month. It must have taken around a month. Now, of course, that is through the NHS stuff, right? But then I think because we're thinking of going, because actually the only scary part I got was this, because when we went to the GP, okay, I was looking at second child, but I wasn't that eager, given the pressures of children here in the UK. Like you have one, and you're a young dad, and you feel like, okay, I'll have another one in 5 years' time. It's too much. But then, my wife was like, I think we should have one as soon as possible, and then, plan ahead. I was like, okay, I'm up for it, no problem. But then when we went to the GP, what scared me was that she said that if stuff doesn't work out and maybe the two of you have a problem, then maybe you might be looking for a surrogate. And I was like, huh? A surrogate? Am I that bad? Like, then the other thing is that my wife has a friend of hers. She had complications with her uterus or something of that sort. And I think the man had a problem. And then there is a way they had to engineer the egg and what do you call that thing, and the sperms, and then they had to shoot them into, I think, the woman, and then for some reason they told us that they would engineer them. If she wanted twins, she would get twins, I swear. And if she wanted a single baby, she would get a single baby. The lady had given, I think, 2 sets of twins, but then the lady, the reason as to why she had those complications is because, like, she wouldn't have a normal menstrual cycle. Like what I heard is she would never, menstruate. That's something of that sort. So they had to engineer that kind of stuff. And I knew that story at the back of my head. And then the GP told me that, hey, if things don't work out like that, maybe you might have to take the IV option, yes. And then, oh, if that doesn't work, then you might have to take the surrogate option. I mean, really, that was too much for me to take in.
Especially for someone who already had the first child. It's not like
exactly. That's the only scare I got. But then I was at the back of my head, I was confident. I was like, I know I'll get a child. Like, you know, if I want a second child, I'll get. I had that sort of confidence in me somehow. Now, but it was quite an experience.
Mayanja, that's very, very informative. And I think that's the beauty of these conversations that we have here. Sometimes you just look at it and you think, but then, and that's the beauty of all of you who come and make this program what actually it is, because through these experiences, we sort of learn, because as you go down the route, you never know when you're going to need some of these aspects. Now, the problem, of course, when it comes to especially men, and it's good to hear from a man's perspective, just in terms of the route that this takes. Men have options that in case, you know, you fail to have a child, you fail to conceive, a man can always run out and, you know, sort himself out, you know, and that happens, you know, people run to Uganda, you go, you get a child there, you know, like a child outside marriage, or maybe no, there are these options. For the women, there isn't, because unless she actually goes and, you know, then she would be a prostitute in that sense, in terms of how it is seen in the society.
And I think the fact
looks
that
like a bit
also,
unfair. Yeah? And
also, I think the other factor when you bring that in is that there are so many birth control measures for women than men. For us, maybe you'll have to use, okay, for those who would go extreme, they might cut. Yeah, but I mean birth control. Like for men who might go extreme, they might go for the vasectomy, but some would rather use condoms and stuff like that. I've lived among Catholics for quite some time, and, you know, Protestants, having lived in Ireland. But then if you move in houses of Catholics, you'll really find, I don't know if it's explicit, but you can let me know. You find more of rubbers, right? Condoms. Now, when you move in Protestant houses, you find so much of contraceptives. Now, that was quite interesting to me. And if you of course, if you learn about the Catholic take on abortion and contraception and all kinds of stuff, it all of a sudden makes sense. And I think if you have lived in the UK you have lived in the UK for a long time, you remember there in the late 2000s, there was a very big spike in child mothers, like so many teenagers were getting pregnant.
Young.
And I don't know if it was a conspiracy, like they were really fertile and they were, you know, hopping around and they were teenage mothers. It was becoming a problem. But there's a conspiracy that people say that, you know, kids were immunized and given certain immunization, saying it was for a certain
we don't
disease.
have evidence to that effect.
Yeah, we don't have evidence for that, but still, yes. But one mother was telling me that, you know, kids were immunized by that stuff, and then on top of that, you know, kids start to take contraceptives as young as 15 or 14, which is quite interesting. I don't know if it does anything, but that's quite interesting. Anyway, that's my
very, very much, Mayanja Fazil, and actually see how quickly time runs when conversations are getting a lot interesting. Thank you very, very much. Stay there. Inshallah, we might actually come back to you as we continue this conversation. I think we are ready for our video, but before that, a quick text message within the chat room. Hafsa Videke, who I will come to at least to hear a bit of testimony in terms of experience, says, hey, here in Uganda, I think most women would fail to conceive because of the pressure from the in-laws who will be speaking behind your back with statements like, but the pressure is too high. While here, I will put it down to diet and the busy day-to-day life. 75W Radio here says this COVID vaccine has a role to play. Don't start the conspiracy theories yet. We are just too early into the COVID vaccine to probably get into the issue of seeing the impact in terms of childlessness. Let's have that second video just to reflect upon that, and that should help to lead us now into the next segment of our conversation. This is 75W Radio and Umma Connected on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Zoom. The sound is not there, Isma. Audio is not there.
Is the following. Person gets married, one of the things that he or she looks forward to after the honeymoon, inshallah, is to have children. And one of the biggest tests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the following. And before I say it, let me tell you, when you understand that Allah has chosen for you a specific package of tests that is uniquely yours, not anyone else's. He knows that He issues sabr and patience according to the package that He's given you to you. You can never be burdened with something beyond what you can cope with, because Allah has promised that He will give out to you the amount of sabr and patience that you actually need for your package that He already knows about. So don't say, I can't cope. Yes, it gets to a level where perhaps you might want to do something about it. You know, people think that when we speak about marriage, you need to stay in an oppressive marriage because Allah says He won't burden you with something that you cannot cope with. That doesn't mean you need to remain in an oppressive marriage. All it means is when it gets to beyond a certain point, you can choose another way out that Allah has allowed you to. That's what it means. You can. So let's not misinterpret what is being said. But what I mean is when there are things you have no control over at all, there is no way Allah will open your door of sabr according to your problem, according to your issue. You lose a loved one, for example. Or the main issue that I wanted to start with is, and I said, one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest tests that Allah tests a couple with is when they do not have offspring. They don't have offspring. That is your paradise. That is your Jannah. Allah says, hang on, I know exactly why I am not giving you offspring. You might not know. I know why I'm not giving you. And I am telling you, this is the biggest test for you. And if you were to bear sabr, I want to let you know that I will be with you. My help is with you. And at the same time, for you is Jannah. إنما يوفى الصابرون أجرهم بغير حساب. Indeed, Allah compensates those who have engaged in any form of sabr, unlimited reward, in an unlimited manner. Allah gives you so much. So my mothers and sisters, if from amongst you there will definitely be people who don't have children and you desperately want those children, and yes, it is correct, Allah will keep you there for as long as He wills, and He may grant you a miracle according to what you perceive is a miracle. And if you don't get what you perceive is a miracle, you need to know that what He has done for you is always a miracle. You need to know this. When Allah doesn't give you what you want, you need to know He's always done whatever He wanted. That was the miracle for you. You may not understand it. I know of people who've had children after a long, long time, and then they lost their children to a motor vehicle accident. And I remember being told, I wish I didn't have these children in the first place. Well, when you didn't have them, you continued to cry about it. Well, there is no harm. You are supposed to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He tests you with not giving you what you want. Think about what I've just said. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given you what you want, one of the reasons is He wants you to draw closer to Him by calling out to Him alone. That's what it is. If every one of us had whatever we wanted, I think a lot of us would not even be reaching out, calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we would be dilly-dallying in our acts of worship. But when you have a problem, it's a medical issue, it's a social issue, it's a financial issue, whatever issue it may be, you start calling out to Allah. Your heart becomes softened. It should become softened. And this is why I say, and I'm repeating, if you don't have children, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the many things that you do have, and continue asking. I'm not saying sit back and say, look, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to seek perhaps medical advice. I don't want to see if there's anything wrong. I don't want, and I'm just going to sit because I'm a mu'minah and I've been told that you just need to be happy with the decree of Allah. That is a warped understanding of taqdeer, of predestiny, warped. Allah says, do whatever is in your capacity to achieve what is beneficial for you according to you. احرص على ما ينفعك. Make sure that you go the extra mile to do that which you believe is beneficial for you. Then استعن بالله ولا تعجز. Seek the help of Allah and don't be lazy. And then when something happens to you, the hadith says, وَإِنْ أَصَابَكَ شَيْءٍ لَا تَقُلْ لَوْ أَنِّي فَعَلْتُ كَانَ كَذَا وَكَذَا فَإِنَّ لَوْ تَفْتَحُ بَابَ الشَّيْطَانِ. When something finally does happen, this way or that way, don't ever go back to blame the term if I did this, had I done this, this would have happened. If I did this, that would have happened. Don't say that, because the if opens the door of the devil. That's what it means. You did it and that's it. I tried my best. I continued making dua, but I'm happy upon what Allah has chosen for me. That's something that I need to understand. So those who don't have children, may Allah bless you with children. Those who don't have offspring, may Allah bless you with offspring. Then, mashallah, we are blessed, mashallah. And what happens 5 years later, 8 years later, 10 years later? I know of a case 18 years later, mashallah, when people almost lost hope and Allah says, hey, I'm going to give you something. And suddenly you're expecting, and suddenly you have a child, and suddenly it's a boy or it's a girl. And mashallah, we're so excited, life changes and everything becomes so exciting. That's the gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isn't it?
Okay, fantastic. Alhamdulillah. I think, well, the video has come in quite handy, I think, to sort of establish as part of the conversation. I'll just come straight to you, Hafsa Bideke. We went into the break with that conversation. There's a hand of God in this, and Allah trying to test someone through this particular experience. Hafsa, you've been listening into the conversation. You've had testimonies of women. Actually, we've not had a particular woman who has come in here to say they are still struggling to find a child. Maybe you are in the conversation and you've just been listening in. You can raise your hand. As you can see, people are willing to listen in. Hafsa, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A very powerful conversation I'm sure we are having on here, and you have had it.
It has been very powerful and quite interesting, actually, and very good points raised there. I was just actually just reiterating what has just been said in the conversation. That honestly, back home, it is all about how it's our culture. It is a blame game to the woman all the time, and knowing that the moment you try to conceive and you fail, psychologically you're tortured.
Mm.
And you know, these things, they work with how well your mind is settled, how your thoughts are settled. So being under pressure that you need to give birth. And the problem is as well, is that the husbands or the men are not helping. Like, I think it is you who mentioned it to someone that the moment you are not conceiving within 2-3 months of being in a marriage, the man is already looking for somebody else. Now that also creates pressure.
Mm.
And God forbid, let that woman give birth, you're in trouble. So chances of you giving birth will just fly away because you're under pressure, you can't think, you can't, So I think this conversation would have sat very, very well with people back home who are really embedded into the Ugandan culture. That listen, it is not all about women not conceiving. It is a two-way. It's a two-way traffic. Men can also be a problem when they cannot conceive. So it is not fair to always be blaming the woman. So
now, given that this is a generational thing, it is something that we have inherited. It's actually some of the things to do with affection. A lot of the affection now we are developing towards our spouses, our children, are things we've watched in movies and then adopted. For those who have had an opportunity to come into the Western world to start picking up some of these things, Like you start
Correct.
really hard. There are people who will be comfortable to kiss their wives in the bedroom, but in public, this public display of affection becomes a problem. Someone refers to it as a mitima jakaruba. How do you convince a community to sort of start changing or adopting, embracing this new change, to start, well, for husband, for example, to start being supportive, to come out and stand there for your wife?
I think it is all about conversations like these ones. If we could get people involved in such conversations, if we could get people get talks about how we should behave, how we should be supportive towards each other, I think the story would be different. And also, people should start minding their own business. Imagine, I think there is a lady there who said that a friend is no longer coming to the community because of, it's because you get there and they ask you, oh, why Ozala? You know, it's as if it's their business. It is not your business, for crying out loud. I am already struggling. I'm not conceiving, and you're asking me, Ozala, they see you when you put on weight. You know that those kind of questions, they are very annoying. People should start minding their own business.
Is it possible, though, given our African setting, given our community settings, just to mind one's business? Is that really a possibility?
Well, it is something we have to learn. We'll keep on talking and we'll have to learn.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Well,
otherwise,
I'm just looking at
very
it
interesting.
from a realistic point of view, because as a community, you find that there is a way we like to know about, how each one and Gundi we have to say. You have to find out. And when you start saying people should mind their own business, then and I think that now crosses a path of danger. So sometimes people ask because they care. It's not just because they are not minding their own business.
Imagine this will put pressure on the mother as well, because why omwana yafumbirwa ali ayimiridde atya tana tunafa kunayo kagamba wadde tanaba kuyoyayo ku buyembe. I mean, those questions are very uncomfortable for somebody who is already struggling. Surely they should know. We should know that it is hard, someone asking such questions. It is hard for these people. It's because we are not in their shoes. We are lucky we have children, but those people who are struggling to have children, and you ask such questions, they are very, very depressing. We need to have this kind of conversations. We need to.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish. Go on.
We need to have this kind of conversations. We need to have talks. We need to have community talks to tell people that, listen, there are some topics that should not be discussed just for privacy. And, oh God, well, yeah.
I can hear the anger in you.
Yeah.
Charles K, I'll be coming to you. But Hafsa, just maybe as a parting question to you, is there any value in trying to assume, like, for people to leave it? I mean, someone I think mentioned it as saying leaving it to God, because every time you go to bed, once you go to bed, I don't think I've honestly ever gone to bed with the intention that I'm going to make a baby. So could it be part of what takes the pressure away? Because the moment you start thinking about it, then you create that picture that I think puts unnecessary pressure on you. I can see 2 hands up there. I'm sure probably we'll find answers in this. But before you go, I just wanted to get this from you. Do you think there's value probably in trying to detach ourselves from the pressures of you're going to bed and the idea is you're going to make a baby?
Obviously there is. Obviously, it would be a good idea if we could learn how to meditate. Unfortunately, it is not a part of our culture, meditating, you see. It would be nice to learn how to meditate. But the thing is,
there's tahajjud.
Yeah, you wake up tahajjud and you cry to your Allah. But as soon as you finish crying to your Allah in the morning, you meet somebody. Why was Allah? And it takes you have moved 10 kilometers and then it takes you back 15.
Mm-hmm. I wish we could get someone that is listening into this conversation that is going through this particular experience, probably to share their
I wanted to invite a friend of mine. Unfortunately, she's working, but she's been having talks. She would have been a very, very good fit for this conversation.
I wish she could find a way of at least popping in before we get to the top of the hour. But Alhamdulillah, I mean, whatever it is, thank you very much, Hafsa. I'll just
Sorry,
read this quick
Mr. Chair.
message here. Thank you very, very much for being part of the conversation. In the chat room, there is some young girls carry out abortions in clinics which damage their tubes or cause infections that damage their reproductive parts. This renders them infertile in the future. That's actually a very big problem now. Lots of abortions taking place left, right, and center, and that, of course, has had an impact. Farida Mitiana says, I like that people minding their own business. I wish they could. It's not an easy one, especially within our communities. Sophia Braga says, our culture, they will stress the woman, and this stress can impact on her childbearing. When you marry in our culture, you marry the whole community or village. That's what it is, and you can't take that away. Actually, it is very hard because most of the time people mean well. Some even want to offer advice. That's exactly my point, because sometimes not everybody who is actually asking whether you have not seen your periods is actually having bad intentions. Rayhan says we need to rethink what it means to create a family outside of biological procreation. Probably that will be our last point, and I'll come to you, Rayhan, with that. But first to Chance K. Chance, I hope now you have the ability to speak. Assalamu alaikum. Chance K. Chance K, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, thanks for the topic. My take on it is I would encourage our community to go for these tests before they engage. They commit to themselves. Like if you're going to get married, I would prefer you seek for professional tests so that you know the outcome before you're committed. For instance, our community is so much stigmatized. For instance, if you're married and you suspect, oh, maybe I may be HIV positive or something else, it's the ladies who take control first. And once the lady goes for a test and it's positive, we men don't think otherwise. We say, oh, it's safe now. So to me, I think
yes. Sad but true. Yes, you're
to
right.
me, that's one part of my take. And the other part of it is about Hafsa. Hafsa was talking about like people should mind about their own business.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's to me, I think it's a bit wrong, because if you are going to conceive, you're not going to hide your tummy, everyone will be able to see it. So if people talk about it, I think it's a way of encouraging you. And if you give them if they can give you some advice, if you have a problem, then your problem can be solved, other than keeping it into denial.
Hafsa, you are hearing Chance. Would you like to respond to him on that?
I'm happy to respond to that. Let me tell you, sir, you have not met, I think, the Ugandan community or the African community.
No,
my issue here is, when I am not pregnant and I am trying, please do not add on the extra pressure. You will ask me, when I'm giving birth, when you are in such a situation, even when you see people talking to themselves, they are talking about something else. Now you're like, last time she asked me, when am I giving birth? Probably they are talking about me. I have not yet given birth. Such things start going into your mind. These are creating more pressure for preventing you to conceive. What my issue here is, please do not be inquisitive.
Chance, you are hearing Hafsa, you can respond. You have both of you have the mic.
It depends. For instance, if it's the so-called Sengas or some, let's say, close relatives, and they say, "Oh, why don't you conceive? What's going on?" They are giving a helping hand, and if you don't open up, it's like it's a counseling trend. You either stay in denial, you accept, or you're willing to open up to get a solution.
There is a difference. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I do apologize.
No, this is a conversation, Hafsa, and that's why both your mics are open.
There is a difference between family and community. Family, if my Senga asks me why, what is happening, I'll say, Senga, angezaako nemuna ebintu biganye. We change this and that and that. But community, from neighbor to neighbor to neighbor, finding out your business, talking about you everywhere. Your friend tells you, do you know what, I found so and so. You know, it is hard. It is hard. If it is not your relative, please keep away. Please, this person is already struggling as it is. He doesn't want any more. She doesn't want any pressure from you. Mind your own business.
All right. Thank you very much, Hafsa. Chance, conclude, please, so that we can bring in more people in the conversation. Hafsa, thank you very much. Yes, Chance, I just wanted Hafsa to respond to that because you had said about the community involvement. And therefore, but go ahead. You had another point to raise.
Yeah, I think going forward, because we are into digital world whereby every day they are innovating modern ways of conceiving. For instance, there is a research whereby they can create a baby from a test tube in a lab. So if you feel you are really at the crossroad, then I would think, I don't know how religion talks about it, but you can seek for other options, modern options, so that you are family and you can have a baby if that's your happiness.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Chance. And Sophia Murangwa says, doctors advise no stress. Doctors advise no stress. It is not counseling, and sometimes their points are more annoying and frustrating. Hey, when you have been there, actually, you can get a lot more to that. Ryan, you have the microphone. Thank you very much, Chance. Barakallahu people. Ryan? Ryan, can you unmute yourself, please? Ryan? Ryan, I'm trying to ask you to unmute yourself, please. If you can unmute yourself. Your hand is up, and I was trying to get you to unmute yourself. Ryan? Okay, in the meantime, I'll go to Ryan. There are lots of Ryans today. Ryan, please, if you can unmute yourself. Ryan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you today? Are you well?
Alhamdulillah, all is well. I hope everybody that's listening in is well.
Alhamdulillah, so far so good. You've been hearing the entire conversation regarding this. Message here from Mimi who says, I'm at work at the moment, I can't come off mute, but I'm getting this pressure from the community. Oh, I wish we could get. I've been married for 5 years, and the pressure from the community and in-laws is real. We've done all the tests, and alhamdulillah, everything is perfect. But the pressure, subhanallah, we have to wait for Allah's timing. Oh, Mimi, I wish we could actually get you. But I understand if you're at work and you're unable to speak. What a shame. But at least we've got to hear from you. At least, and this is what we were burning to hear from someone who is actually experiencing this situation. I'm sorry, it was quite handy to help in our own conversation. Do you know anyone, or did you go through a similar situation? I know you have two children, two beautiful children.
Alhamdulillah, I have not been tested with infertility, but I know about 3 close friends, really like close friends of mine that have struggled with conceiving, and it's really, really tough. And I think for most of them, the pressure was like Sister Hafsa said, mostly coming from the external sources rather than from within themselves. But the problem is, when you hear so much white noise, you start to drown in the white noise. And actually, for one of them, her mental state was really bad. And eventually, anyway, the union ended for her and her husband. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think when I hear of this topic, I think of so many sort of facets to it. There is what the couple itself goes through. Obviously, you're dealing with something that is really trying, especially if you've all, obviously most couples, I suppose, dream of having children when you get married. But also what I hear is a sense of loss. And I don't know how many couples acknowledge or would bring themselves to say that they're grieving a loss of so far, unfulfilled hopes, like of having a child. But also one of the key things that I've picked up is like there seems to be a double standards when it comes to men and women in terms of who gets the biggest blame if a couple cannot conceive. Like the Sheikh said, ultimately, and I believe all religions believe that children are a gift from God. So and ultimately God will decide whether you will have children or not. All you can do as human agents is try your best, whatever that looks for you within your means and your capacity. So with that being said, that brings me to the point that if you have been tested with a situation whereby you're struggling to conceive, and do those people have enough support to sort of, or somebody to support them and point out the fact that their entire identity is not really tied in with whether they're a mother or a father? Because I think the whole issue with a big part of it is feeling like your identity is tied to you not bearing children. Whereas when you have children, before you have children anyway, you're somebody's daughter, you're somebody's sister, you're somebody's brother if you're a man. So I think for me, that's a really important element to this aspect.
Now, Rayhan, there was a mention about the fact that people should mind their own business, but you realize that for help to be available, it's about having these conversations with the different people. You saw, I think the first person, it was Amina Amba, who came on and said the books that she had bought, I think from books that came in quite handy in helping her sort of know how to calm her situation and then, stay on course doing whatever she needed to do, but at least she had that thing. The only way you can find that is having conversations. And yet, somebody else is saying people should mind their own business. You almost seem to point towards that as well.
No, I think what Sister Hafsa meant was actually like, we all have, I suppose, an inner circle, and obviously when you're having personal struggles, it is important to find an outlet and to support, find support from the people that actually care about you. I think what Sister Hafsa was referring to is generally, for example, if there was a member of the community getting married, we don't all have to know that person sort of in, on a very personal level. But what happens is we kind of tend to insert ourselves in their business. We make it our business to know, oh, Gundia, yafumbira mwaka guli, ngateba nazala. I think that's the kind of thing she's referring to.
But Habiba, the issue here is here. Marriage is a community aspect. When you are going to get married, you send us budgets, we contribute to this. It's a community affair. Why is it that when it comes to the procreation, which should be the product of this marriage, then you say we mind our own business? Why does it become personal once you are in your home, and yet when you're getting
I think I beg to differ, because I ultimately see people do not decide sigenda kuzala kalo kuja ngeno mbazungu nti people can take can make an active choice that I don't want children, but generally in our culture already, culture as it stands, there's already a lot of pressure on women in very, very many aspects. And anyway, if that's the case, again and why are you firing blanks? I mean, I'd like to know how many men have been approached brother, what's going on? The problem is all those questions are directed at women. And like Sister Hafsa said,
women who talk too much, men don't talk that much. Actually, if when we are talking about
only that, you all have your own, family get-togethers.
As Hajia is testifying, but if they delay, people will ask. But of course, when they ask, the difference with men is when they are asking, they are almost pointing you to the next woman. They are sort of saying, if the other one is delaying, why should you?
And if I may ask, how does that help your situation? Anyway, for example, if your wife doesn't conceive, men, you've been given that option. But I think, you see, I have a different take. Is like, when we're coming together as a union, as a couple, I think there are things that we probably be so that when we get in those situations, then we find ourselves struggling to have these difficult conversations. Because
like for example,
I think one of the listeners said that people need to go for fertility tests before they get married and what have you, and that is all very well, but there are people who are perfectly fertile individually. For example, you go for individual test na vichi nene mtu ukaela abana ne bagana.
The compatibility there is no compatibility.
Yes, biologically tebalaba nsonga lwachi you cannot conceive. Secondly, I'd like to take the view that if we are getting it and obviously this is a general assumption that children are conceived under an arrangement of marriage, I would like to think if I was getting married to somebody, that they would see me beyond me giving them children. For example, if we get married, either if I'm the one with a problem, or in quotes, does that reduce my value as a wife because I cannot mother children to you? I think that is another conversation we need to have. Yeah. Because the problem I have is like we seem to put all this thing on which is all very well. Yes, it is the ideal, but the fact is we do not live in an ideal world. So are we then saying that there are no marriages that survive infertility, or can marriages not survive infertility? Do you know what I mean? So I think this thing goes beyond. And if I can flip it, think about it like when we have children, for people who have been blessed with children, it is the same identity crisis that comes that for example, when you hear of people going through like a midlife crisis, you get to a point where, for example, if you get married young at 21 or 22, whatever, you go through your childbearing years and you get to a point like at 40 and you don't know who the hell you are. So almost children have taken over your identity as a person. So that same thing could be flipped. No gamba does it take away from me being me? Does it take away from me being Habiba? Does it take away from my worth? Does it take away from myself? I think that is a bigger question. And I think once we can get to grips with that mentally, and understand that there are people that for whom God has prescribed children in whatever time frame he does. And there are people that no matter what they do, they are never going to have children because it is in their decree. Not to say that they cannot try, as the Sheikh said, but I think, there's a balance that needs to be struck. And when I say this, I remember there's a famous Sheikh. No, she was actually a lady, a Quran teacher. And I think she's based in Egypt. She was quite an elderly lady, but she'd been married and all her life she'd never had children, but she was a hafidha and she used to teach Quran. And obviously her test was that she could not have children, despite, obviously having been married for a long time and wanting to have children. And when she was asked about this, she said it beautifully. She said that Allah tested me, with not having children, so she could free me to teach. So Allah freed me to teach other people's children Quran, and those have been my children. So I know this seems very sort of out there when you say it like that, but the point I want to rein in is that we need to rethink identity outside of not having children. What does that mean to the self? What does that mean to the couple? And I think if we can get to grips with that, we might have better solutions whereby if we are tested with not having children, we are able to deal with better. We're able to deal with that test better mentally and in a healthy way. And of course, it's okay to feel sad and to grieve about not having a child. But to be fair, you don't know what you're grieving. Just like the Sheikh said, Allah tested you because you do not know what, if you had a child, what that would have been. Just like the story in Surah Kahf, when Allah gave this couple the child, and then he took away the child because the child was going to become really a disgrace to the parents. So it is a double-edged sword. It is extremely sensitive.
Habiba, I'm just stopping you so that I can bring in more people. The time is quickly running. Actually, it always gets very interesting towards the end. there's not much that we can do. It just means we have been able at least to tackle very difficult conversation. Thank you very, very much, Habiba. I think it adds into the value of the conversation. Right? Abde Kawesa says, I think it doesn't take away the fact that you are a woman and wife, but the problem comes when the other party wants to have children. It's about how you come to terms with that and agree on the way forward in a way that Allah permitted. So you allow the man to get married so that he can have children with another woman who can actually give birth but maintain you as a wife, or how do you go about it? Ryan, your hand is up. And Ismail Mugisha, your hand went down, but I'll come to you later. Ryan, finally, I think we've got you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It has been very difficult trying to get you, but finally it looks like you are there. Yes,
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, all the participants have really added, everything the discussion needed. But I have 2 points, Che. One point, I think we should, as Africans, we should look where our culture, first of all, we can't disassociate our culture to the modern way of living. Rather, we can try to amalgamate and see what works for us and what doesn't. Now, going to the point, nti abantu bateeka nnyo pressure ku mukyala gw'onoozaala ddi. Of course, it's in our culture, but senga bamaama babuuza in good faith, owange kiri kiti eyo. In the essence, balabe, do you need help? Bakwanga, they have experienced this situation before. Likewise, n'abasajja naffe tufuna eno tiwe mukyala ngatazaala kiki gwe tofayalinga kiki ne basulayo akayinja, just to jog the memory. So oli ogamba nti anti batunulira nnyo, they look into the woman ne bagamba ki, no, it's always in good faith. Obviously wajja kubawo bad apples nga bo they are nosy. Era you can spot that that negative energy n'ogireka naye ndaba nti tulabenga tetugira nnyo gamba the modern way of living in kakati ffe, we can't allow that, that kind of community, family kind of, well, that's where the help in the end will come from. In most cases, that's when people open up. Now, the other thing, we have to see ngabantu tugenze mu relationship, marriage. Into what do we all want? Abamu they enter marriage, nga ye agambi, buli omu kuwasa, olide. Kabine by'abaana, it comes later. Naganti, twafunye omwana. So, tulaba nti oyinza okulaba omukazi omuntu yayingidde mu bufumbo nga kuzaala kale n'alaba nti takoze eki, he hasn't conceived oba n'agamba oba nze na problem. So tulina okulaba nti both couple kiki, what's the interest in this marriage. Then the problem arising not conceiving, it will derive interests zaabwe initially. Kikikuba waliwo abantu agamba bosanga we to conceive is but we are okay to adopt. In modern world, so we need to know that yes, science get deco. Na ye science agenda tuvugate kuchintu kirala. In any case, osanze omuntu omwagala nnyo, you've invested a lot. Science n'agamba nta conceiving noganti oba tusobola okufuuka ba surrogate. Now does Islam allow it? So all these issues they arise. So we need to prepare our mind. What's our interest? Si bufumbo as bufumbo. Wanga bino abana ebera mu Islam tukiyita nti eba baraka naye kibakize kugamba biba ekisoka tulina exactly. Kakati bino naye ffe tugenda ne tutunuulira oli n'olaba yagenze mugundi nga ayina n'ekigundi kyavuga kane pressure nejja psychological omusajja oba oli older than the woman. Kakati olaba tazaala omutaddeko pressure golaba okuze kati naye omukazi psychologically nebimu affectinga ne mood ziz'okugenda mu system nazo ne zidduka naye nga ate aconceiving. So nzirayo seka point yaffe nti let's not disassociate ourselves from our culture and community intervention. Rather, we should try to work with it. We can try to implement things. That's the only way forward. Never to narrate a lot of science and a lot of this, because I worked in mental health here in England for quite a while. What I realized, when people can't seek help within their own people, now they turn to the outside. Now, if the outside is a vampire, in the sense in Chitegeza, they are there, go balaba until okay, they care for you, but you don't know. then you can be eaten up. So let's exhaust our community intervention. Now, what we are doing now, it's been done before. Bamama febainaka abantu abatazaala naye ne babeera mu bufumbo naga tusinga mwetazaalanga but bamukuma ate paka uncle yagenda n'awasa naye she was a good person for the family moralo boost noki ate baka nti oyo ye yazaala naye ate abaana bonna bakulira erimu basenga bajjajja kwa she didn't have that that gundi eyokuza abaana naye banazaala
motherly aspect. Yes.
Exactly. So my point in I've gone on here, let's not disassociate a lot from our cultural background and norms in no, let's just work with it and see where it's practical, apply it, because at the end of the day, when we don't have that originality of so Musonyi, we have really rambled it.
No, thank you very much, Ryan. I think it just comes out very, very clearly. We can no longer mind our own business. We are back to minding community business to ensure that we can.
But the key is the balance, Sheikh. Is the balance.
No, yeah. I get your point. I get your point.
None of them. Obategedde nze mutabani wo otegedde wajjamire Enfield naye akwa mutabani wange yataddeko zoom yeeyo.
Barakallahu fikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just to remind you quickly that tomorrow, Bridging the Gap at 7 p.m., they will be discussing issues that men go through and find hard to talk about.
Inshallah.
Also is man's number one problem. Ryan, so whoever you say barakallahu fikum kujide ku Ryan ticket. So Ismail Mugisha, you have the microphone.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. You've been listening.
Yeah, let's agree to disagree.
Yes.
I'm of the opinion that we actually our communities we mind so much going to other people's business unnecessarily. As somebody said that when we are going to wed or we come and say contribute this and contribute whatever, yes, we ask you to contribute and we give you a wedding. That's why it ends. Your contribution ends there. Now, if I don't invite you in my bedroom, then you have no business to know what comes out of that bedroom. Wait until when you see it out there. But when you start asking, when are you having a baby, when are you having that, that's pressure to women. Honestly, we have to agree that we give these ladies a lot of pressure when they don't give birth and what have you. So the issue is, if I don't invite you in my bedroom, that's where everything ends. So wait up to what comes out of that bedroom. Don't start putting pressure on a woman that when are you conceiving and what. And the other thing is, there are people who there's a need to know. There are those who have to know and those who don't have to know. The Sengas, right, may want to know to a certain extent. But a neighbor also wanting to know why you're not having a baby. Surely that's going beyond, and that's my view.
But you will know what I smile from our traditions that a Senga even used to come and sleep next to the bed there. She would be in the room to hear on the first night to see whether this is a person who will be possible to who will have the potential to conceive.
Yes.
Some traditions that was the case, and she had to take the bed sheet the following morning as well.
They used to do that just wanting to find out if one is a bikra or not a bikra.
One is a virgin, yes. No,
yes.
Also the ability whether the man had the ability to be able to procreate, because that they had to be that, and the Senga would sometimes have to come in and help in case help was needed. But those are the dying traditions which I think we have lost in very quickly. So you're saying we should mind our own.
We should mind our own business and let get to know what you have to know. What you don't know, you don't have to know. You shouldn't know.
So the idea of people coming with good intentions, because they might be asking because probably if there is need for help, then they could provide the help.
See, the thing is, when it comes to need to help, surely if I need that help, me and my wife will talk about it and seek that help. But when you start coming wanting to give me that help, sure, I've not asked you for help. Why do you have to interfere?
Right. Fantastic. Thank you very much. When I smile, Sophia Mlangwa here says you can open up, but this is not assisting you in any way. And some just add on stress. Some just are noisy. We need to empathize and having sympathy. Raihan says, that is why I say we need to understand and define our own identity beyond being a mother or father. Our intrinsic value doesn't decrease with the inability to mother or father children. At the end of the day, it's only God who decides. Yes, people can be parents without being the biological source of the offspring. And okay, there was here somebody, hey, mind your own business, mind your own busy. That's a very important point. It's business, I think that was meant there. Uh, Thank you. Privacy and confidentiality. Yes, that was the issue on boundaries. And Haji Ambika says, and voice Castro, you are opening up the doors to nose poking into your business, just like taking foreign aid. So, in other words, ubogenda kuwasa zikunganya what is weze, togenda kuisa kampo. Otherwise, since we mind our business, we have to mind your business since we came for the actual wedding. Isma in the studios, please, if you can play that last clip before we wrap up now tonight's conversation, and that is advice from the Sheikh, one of my best Sheikh, Numan Ali Khan, looking at today's particular topic and in terms of the perception that we should have, especially when one finds themselves in that situation. Isma, had you given up on the clip? If you are getting ready, then I can just pop in and bring one more person while you're getting ready. Let me know when you are, and then we'll just play that clip, and that will get us out. I've seen someone in the conversation, but who has been quiet from the very start, and that is Uthman Walid, and he's Abu Fahim, I think. Uthman Walid, when you unmute yourself, please, we just want to hear from men, because it has been now, the women have spoken, they have poured out their hearts, as they usually do. But we've had also very, very interesting revelations from men. And my best one tonight being Mahaja Fazil. I think he stands out from the men's side just in terms of the amount of detail and the knowledge that we got to learn. Uthman, are you there? Isma, when you're ready, please just give me an indication, and then we'll just get that. Hami, you've been in. Mimi, I'm just wondering if you're still unable to speak, if you're still at work. Would have been very good at least to hear from you before we close tonight's conversation. Isma, when you're ready, please just give me a hand, and I'll roll to you just to get that. I'm getting the messages. Stella, today you have been very, very quiet tonight. It's very unusual, Stella. You have been very quiet. I haven't seen you in the conversation. How are you today?
Yes, hello. Thank you for this topic today. Yes, I've just been listening in, and yeah, just following. Because
it's not a problem. It's not a problem you faced at any point. I know you have your son, but it's not a problem. You didn't have any problems conceiving.
No, I didn't have any problems.
Right.
I didn't have any problems. The only problems I have is people asking, when are you having more? That's the only problem. Why should you have one? Why are you so selfish?
Yes, you should.
That's
have
all. But I didn't have any problems. Yes.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Ahmed Mawanda, I see you there as well. Ahmed, I haven't heard from you as well tonight. I'm sure you came in quietly, but we've been able to identify you, and so is Boss Lady as well. Ahmed Mawanda, are you able to just come in quickly?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just enjoy this show, and I hope we're gonna benefit all of us.
Allah.
And I hope we may have more of this, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah. Well, these are topics that we actually continue having. This is our global community conversation, where we come in here and open up on issues, quite detailed but decently. And therefore, Boss Lady also came back to say at work, therefore can't talk unless you are listening in the background. Ahmed, I'm sure, having listened into this, well, I'll ask you just one simple question, which is about people minding their own business. They are saying as a community, we shouldn't be trying to find out how people are. Is that something you agree with?
I think this is a disease where it takes us, all of us, in a challenging way, because it creates a lot of pressure on the people who are having some kind of struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how we're going to do about it, but I think if the sheikhs can help the community to shape up itself,
Mm-hmm.
and we maybe we can adapt the culture to mind our own business regarding to that, to the
But
to privacy.
the chef might also be part of that same community who also want to find out why
That's very true, but it's like it takes all of us. We have to find a way, to just to get rid of that culture of involved in something which we cannot supposed to be involved in.
Yes. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Ahmed.
Thank
And
you.
he is still at work, therefore unable to talk, but says Sister Habiba and Hafsa's words have given me comfort and a great reminder to wait for Allah's timing. MashaAllah. Fantastic, and maybe a good note to wrap it up on. Thank you very much, Ahmed Mwanda. Isma, if you're ready, please. Yes, let's roll with that clip and then we'll wrap up tonight's conversation. Thank you very much to everyone who has contributed. But wait and just hear these chef's words. Probably they might just carry some message for you. Ready when you are, Isma. No, it's the last one. It's the next one. And Hami, I've got your message. You can't talk right now. Looks like you're at work as well. Okay, so let's have that final message. And thank you to everyone, especially wherever you are, those who are at work and still manage to bleed into the conversation and listen in. And those in Kampala, especially, it's really late. It's nearly 1 o'clock. It's already 1 o'clock in Kampala, and you're still up. Go ahead, please, Isma, when you are ready. Let me hope the volume is on as well. Yeah, it starts a bit quiet and then. Is that without the volume?
Yet another interesting question that was posed to me by a sister in one of the lectures in the Gulf Tour was about her inability to have children. And the fact that because she can't have children and she's been married for over 10 years, that her mother-in-law says some pretty mean things to her and keeps telling her son that your daughter, or your wife rather, is a disappointment. She says things directly, indirectly, through gestures, and expresses her displeasure. And there's this stigma associated with this woman not being able to have a child. Now, a woman that wants to have a child and is unable to have a child goes through a lot of emotional trauma on her own as it is. And it doesn't help that an overzealous mother puts all this pressure on top of that. And when she came to me, she was almost in tears already about how her mother-in-law keeps saying these things and her husband doesn't stop her from saying it. And the husband's also in an awkward position because that's his mom. How's he going to stop her from saying this stuff, right? There's a lot of ladies out there, a lot of wonderful, women believers out there that go through similar situations where things are said to them, about their inability to have a child that are just absolutely horrendous. The things to note here that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is that the ability to have a child is actually not within the hands of human beings. This is a gift given from Allah. And the tests that Allah gives us are not an indication of how much He loves or doesn't love us. Every human being has tests. Every human being is given difficulty. As a matter of fact, you have, prophets that make dua that they would have some child to carry their legacy, and they don't have any children until very, very, very late in their years. So you have a problem of, a test from Allah Azza wa Jalla. In some cases, you have prophets that have children, like Nuh alayhi salam has a son. Great. I wouldn't want a son like the son of Nuh alayhi salam, who would rebel, and at the end of the day, he would be called innahu amalun ghayru salih. He's a deed no good. He's something that is no good. He's not even no good son. He's a no good deed to begin with. Such a horrible depiction in the Quran of this young boy or this man. So first and foremost, we need to back off in blaming people for the tests that Allah puts them in that are beyond their control. This is a horrible thing to do. It's an arrogant and an ignorant thing to do. But what I told this woman, and what I'd like to tell my sisters also, is that you have to be realistic. And what I mean by that is sometimes there are people who have their opinions and they have their emotions, and as ignorant as those emotions can be, you cannot change them. Nobody can change them. The sooner you recognize that she is not going to stop saying terrible things every chance she gets, she's not going to stop having these horrible glances of the eye or the faces that she makes or the sliding comments directly or indirectly to you and to others, that it's never, ever, ever going to stop. The sooner you internalize and accept that, the sooner you can move on with your life. You cannot change people. Your job in life is to learn to deal with people. Sometimes people are very difficult to deal with, and you just have to deal with them. You will learn to brush off her hurtful words so the moment you stop expecting better from her. You just can't accept that. Maybe this is her weakness. She just can't get over it. And you will, the next time she says it, you just realize where it's coming from and you just kind of let it go. You don't hold on to it. You don't let it get to you, you know? This is more about you learning to navigate hurtful words than about changing somebody else. Any problem in Islam, when the solution in your head is changing somebody else, think again. Think again, because we don't control people. We just don't. All we can do is control and mature the way we think about something. And I feel your pain, I really do. And I feel terrible that you're in this situation, you know, but at the same time, the only way you can have a happier life and not stop thinking about this problem is that you just grow thick skin. And if your husband fails to, I mean, if the husband is listening, my advice to the husband is, listen, you need to pull your mother aside and tell her to stop saying these things. You just need to tell her. Because and this is not disrespectful. Correcting your parents if they're wrong and they're doing something wrong, they're doing zulm, they're hurting somebody with their words, is not disrespectful. This is being written against your mother in her account. The angels are writing this as a sin. Why would you want your mother to get in trouble on Judgment Day? Wouldn't you want to save her from that? So you saying, I shouldn't say anything, you're not doing a good deed. This is not a righteous deed. This is you helping, perpetuating a wrong that's happening inside your family. Telling your mother that something is wrong is okay. This is completely okay. You have to be respectful and loving when you do it, but that's it. Just be respectful and loving and correct it. May Allah Azza wa Jal make you better husbands, make the wives stronger wives, and may Allah Azza wa Jal make the parents more patient and more loving and kind and merciful with the words that they choose. And may Allah Azza wa Jal not hold us to account for the ignorant things that we say and do. Barakallahu wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. And what better way actually to sort of, you know, conclude these very beautiful words, I think, which actually lays to rest a lot of around the conversation that we have been having tonight. As far as we just says later on, Dove, no, I think the message has moved. It was about Stella's pressure now being pushed to when is she having the next baby, the next child. And as far as we just says, I heard of someone who went as a second wife but failed to conceive. The pressure was way too much, and they ended up divorcing. And Stella here was coming. Hafsa was still advising Stella, saying, you know, blank them. I can't be bothered. Hold on one second. Blank them anyway. I'm a very private person. I feel offended when one tries to know my business, especially when I don't mind other people's business. Eish, people. Well, that is the community that we live in. We just keep doing it the better. Well, last week, Alhamdulillah, we had a conversation regarding investment or diaspora investment. We had promised that we were looking for people, representatives from the Uganda Revenue Authority, Uganda Investment Authority, and Immigration. I managed to get to them, but you know, the government procedures, so I've had to write letters and so on. Inshallah, that might be our topic next week on Tuesday. So they have agreed to come on, at least Investment Authority and URA. I'm just waiting for confirmation from Immigration, which shouldn't be a problem per se. So inshallah, next week we'll be able to have that big conversation around things like dual citizenship, investment in Uganda, the tax policies, and so on. Tomorrow is Mind the Gap with Becca Chiinji, where he'll be talking about the problems that men face, but find it hard to talk about, and probably men's problem number one. Well, that's the conversation, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, tonight we're just talking about childlessness, and what a topic. People have come in very, very strongly. It's been very, very interesting to hear. Umma Connected, I can see the hand up. I think there is a flag. Yes, please go ahead. I'm sure there is something I've forgotten that is running probably before that.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Interesting conversation, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Ameen.
Mine is just to comfort those that haven't had children, those that are still trying to have children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls children hiba or hab, gifts. A gift, you can appreciate a gift whenever it comes. So Allah's timing is the best timing. And I'm just comforting those ones that are still trying. My uncle told me one day, he was 60 years old and in 2000. And my aunt was expecting. I asked him, why you have already 15 kids, you're having another one. And he told me, abana banyuma, especially ngokuze, ngabana aballa, they've all gone, they've started work, they've gotten married, they're married. Bw'otasigazzaawo gw'ogenda kutuma na kunyumyamu naye n'osigala ne mukazi wo wakati waddamu kunyuma. So omwana wonna wajjira aba kirabo okuva Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you haven't got children and you're still trying, hang in there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows lwaki agenda mukuwa ku time eyo gyasaze. Omanyi waliwo abantu throwing challenges to some people, omuntu aluddewo okuwasa oba omuntu aluddewo okuzaala. Nazaala ddi abaffe twazaala dda abaana baffe bafumbiddwa gwe abo baliwa, and emboozi ezo zonna zonna ezitali nnungi eri bantu. It's just babeyingiza mu buyinza bwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Keke waba having abaana be ng'akyali, alhamdulillah, naye nze ate nze ku lwange kids are kids. Ate n'ekirala omwana wonna wajjira anyuma, ante basinga okunyuma. Maybe you'll agree with me or disagree. Between the ages of 1 to 10, abaana banyuma nnyo. We bakola ne bafuuka ba teenagers nga batandika okulumya omutwe. So omwana yenna wajjira, oba you're 40, you are a woman, tonafuna mwana, you're 40, you are a man, you're 50 and tonafuna mwana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawa Ibrahimu abaana nga ali 8. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawa bannabbi abaana nga bakuze. Naam. Ate ne babeeyagaliramu n'abafuula ebirabo eby'amaanyi. So hang in there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his reasons lwaki tanakuwa baana. Tokaaba, tofaayo. Could be that ababba kuwa ng'okyali muto baali badde ezo spams ezo z'obadde okyalina ng'oli muto, z'obadde olina zibadde z'abaana nga bali togenda kusobola kubeera nabo nga kigenda kuba tests ez'amaanyi, bagenda kubeera autistic, bagenda kubeera nga balina skits, bagenda kulaluka, bagenda kuba bayaga, bagenda kuba babbi. Ezo spams zonna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala n'azikugyamu, n'osigazaamu spams, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nga kulinze ku myaka 45 ohavinga spams, ohavinga abaana abagenda okudefininga okuwa happiness entuufu, abagenda okubeera abalungi. So we shouldn't, nga Sheikh wagambye, Sheikh Norman Ali Khan, nange seeka wange nnyo Sheikh Kayira, nti tetulina kuzanyisa test ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala oba kugisekerera nga Allah testinga abalala. Naam. Bannaffe tuleke okubasekerera n'okubabanja, twejje mu buyinza bwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tubeere abantu aba encouraginga, saba despising never putting down bantu. Always encourage your brother, encourage your sister, lift them up, inspire them, and comfort them, promise them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is laying in watch and is seeing okugaba kale to all those abatalina baana. Hang in there, Allah knows best.
Barakallahu fikum, Sheikh. And Mimi, who couldn't join the conversation because she's at work, She said, I'd like to thank you all. Allah guided me here, subhanallah. I'm so busy at work, but I listened attentively. This is the first one and the only one who came out to say she's actually struggling 5 years since she got married, and she hasn't been able to conceive. All tests have proven she's fine to go ahead. It just hasn't come to that point. But what a very good point probably to end tonight with. We just pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever is going through that difficult situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for them. Nilfa was saying alhamdulillah to Sheikh Zaid for the best advice for being hopeful. Never give up hope. And I'd like to thank you all for the conversation tonight. Seemed like a very difficult one, but we have managed with your help, all of us together, to navigate through it. And alhamdulillah, it looks like we have come across, we are over the riverbank, and we can go and have our cup tonight, inshallah. Thank you very much. See you next week, inshallah. For those who can join Bridging the Gap tomorrow with Becca Chinji, 7 p.m., talking about the problems that men find hard to talk about. It would be very interesting just to hear probably. There are many things that men go through but find very hard to communicate, either out of fear, either out of compassion, whatever. That's for tomorrow, inshallah. Thank you very much and have a very good night, especially to people across in Uganda. It's already past 1 o'clock and you're still up. People in the United States, it's still daytime and you're still at work. People here, actually, many of you are still at work and you managed to tune in and made this conversation what it is worth. The program is Come, Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, and we have been live on 75 Radio via Facebook, on Umma Connect, via YouTube, and via Zoom, where this entire conversation has been running. I can only thank you very much and wish you a very good night. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and allow us to meet next week. Please keep it this position. Next week we are here back with this conversation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi